What is going on, everyone? Thank you, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Coffee with a Beauty Reviewer. And today, folks, wrong one. Let's change out of this outfit and the coffee. Okay, that is way better. So, I just want to say again, thank you so much for watching my video, and let's get started for Avengers: Age of Ultron review. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching my channel, and please like and comment down below, and please subscribe to my channel as it really helps me out. And let's get started with today's video. So Avengers: Age of Ultron is the second movie of the Avengers franchise, and I just gotta tell you straight off the bat, I would say that this one is the weakest among the Avengers films, but it does have like a good essence. It does have some good stuff in it, but there was a lot of stuff. I think there were a lot of big issues in this movie, especially when it came down to kind of like the pacing, and it just came down to kind of like the smaller details. I mean, there were some really nice details that was included into the movie, but when it comes to the structure of the film, it just felt like it was disjointed a little bit, because you were getting kind of like this story, then to this, and that, and that, and that. It felt like it had too many subplots, especially with the Olsen twins, Pietro and Wanda. I mean, without a doubt, I think Pietro and Wanda was a nice new addition into this movie, because they really did a good job in just kind of like tying everything up with the previous films that came before, and also with like the first Avengers, because you can already tell that this is the team that we all wanted to see. We wanted to see them fight the enemies. We really wanted to see them become like the Avengers. We wanted to see them be the team that we all know that they can be. And it was just a nice treat that we got to be treated that in the very beginning sequence, where you actually see them take on Hydra. And I just really just enjoyed how they just kind of like tied a lot of things together, especially when it came down to kind of like future films, especially when it come to the likes of like Civil War, then on to like Black Panther, because they did do a little bit of a teaser for Black Panther, and this was the very first movie that I was all like, well, we already know that Wakanda has to be out there, because it was teased in the second Iron Man, it was teased in this movie, and it was even teased by Captain America franchise, because his shield is made out of vibranium, and they said it was made out of vibranium. So that's just at least one thing that just made me more excited for this movie, because they were going one step closer to revealing to us who is going to be the Black Panther. I mean, there was no Black Panther, but at least they did something to kind of make us go like, that's Claw. And he's actually a main villain to T'Challa, and it was just a nice addition that they brought in Golem, King Kong, Caesar, like the very man that I have so much respect for, because he is by far one of the greatest motion capture actors of all time. Andy Serkis, like I really thought he was perfectly casted to play Ulysses Claw. He's kind of menacing, but somehow he had some nice humor. But without a doubt, the villain, I actually really enjoyed just kind of like the progression when he was first created, because the main point of Ultron is that he's meant to be kind of like the protector, but he's a protector that was misguided in the beginning when he was born. But
you know what's in that cradle?
I really think that this is kind of like a underrated villain,
I wouldn't call it a
I felt like that they could have done more with him. Like, I felt like that they should have killed him off so quickly. But either way is that I knew that down the road we would get a Ant-Man movie, and we did. But the thing was is that at the time, I was going like, okay, well, it's in the name, Age of Ultron, so we already know that Ultron is going to be the main bad guy. And so when I was watching this, I'm like, is it going to be Tony Stark or is it going to be Hank Pym? But either way, I really do think that it just made a lot of sense that it would had to be Iron Man that would actually create Ultron. Because if they were not going to have Ant-Man to be part of this universe at that time period, then it had to be Tony Stark. But in the comic books, Ultron was actually made by Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man. And so I noticed that they just kind of need to like retool a little bit of origin stories here and there, because like when you got the likes of Wanda and Pietro, who are actually known as mutants, the children to Magneto, they are mutants. But that was in the case of when they did this movie, is that Disney did not yet own the characters of, well, you guessed it, the X-Men. Because there were some like legal battles, and there was just a lot of like litigations in saying that like you cannot say this specific word, you cannot do this, you can't do that. So they were kind of limited to what they could do with Wanda and Pietro, because like I said before, I mean, all they can say is their names, but not their actual comic book names, which is Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. And so I think they did a good job with what they could do, but I really feel like that down the road, Disney really wanted to purchase the rights to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. And so like it just really culminated everything that we've already known about the Marvel Cinematic Universe from the first movie of Iron Man up to this point, because this is really the movie where they are starting to like develop the groundworks of each character individually, because they've already done several movies for Thor, for Captain America, for Iron Man. And so I just really enjoyed it that they just kind of like capitalized on this trinity of superheroes. Like, you're seeing kind of like this division already going on in this movie, especially when there's like this argument between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, because they were going like, I have this ideal, but I have this ideal, and we're not really seeing eye to eye. So they're doing a little bit of foreshadowing that would go towards Civil War. So either way, I would have to say is that this movie is just kind of like, it felt like it was more kind of like a filler Avengers movie. So like, I think it was just doing a lot of stuff to answer our questions, and it was to kind of like boil the water, because it felt like that this is more kind of like, it's put into the frying pan, but not yet out of the fire. That's how I saw this movie. But into the fire would actually be Avengers Infinity War. And so that's why I felt like about this movie, especially now that I look back and I just kind of like see what they did with this movie, is the fact that this is just a simmering film that is talking about so many people at this point. Like, we already got a good glimpse of several characters such as Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, Bruce Banner, the Hulk. So like, we already have a good glimpse of who they are. Now they really didn't need to kind of like further develop their characters a little bit, but I mean, they did do some character development, but they really stayed a little bit closer into doing more development for Quicksilver, for Wanda, and even for Hawkeye. And it felt like that this movie was very disjointed, especially when they went into that little cabin area where they were all secluded and they meet Hawkeye's family. I mean, I'm down for kind of like knowing more about Hawkeye. I think it was just a nice addition that it just really helps us go like, okay, he's a family man. And I think that's a good thing that they can do. But either way, I really do think that they could have done more into kind of like making this movie feel more jointed. But I just really think that this movie could have been better. I think it has a lot to do with the execution. I think there was a lot of really good ideas in this movie, but I felt like that it was not as executed as well as I envisioned it, especially when I saw it for the first time. I mean, I still enjoyed watching this movie, but I felt like that it had a lot of pacing issues, and it felt like that they kind of like sidelined a couple characters, but I just really enjoyed it that I think they did a pretty good job with the villain with Ultron, done by James Spader, and he's just one of those actors that he's kind of like he's kind of like one of those actors, he's either like a good actor or a bad actor. But I remember seeing him in The Office, and he just played the role as like a character I've never seen before in a TV show, especially when it comes to a sitcom. And so like, I'm all like, okay, this guy, he's gonna be Ultron? But either way, I really do think that James Spader did a really good job into kind of like making this robot essentially to look like he's actually very menacing. And I just really liked it that they kind of like tied him into kind of like being Pinocchio in a way. I mean, he actually does make a Pinocchio reference. And he's saying that there are no strings on me, now I am free. What he means is that he feels like he's no longer under the threshold of Tony Stark, because he was created to actually be the protector of Earth from out of this world alien invasions, because that was the very reason why he was made, is that he was made by the idea of Iron Man going like, look what happened in Avengers 1. An alien race tried to invade, led by a demigod, Loki, and so he's all like, we need something that will protect us. And like, he had the right reasons to do that, but I felt like that just the fact that he created Ultron, he was kind of like an accidental villain, because he was still partially Iron Man in a way, and even Bruce Banner, like their minds were kind of like combined together, and his ideals were actually somehow like good on paper, but he took the route of human annihilation, and that's not good. And so that is the very reason why that I just really enjoyed it, that they just kind of like this made this yin to yang thing between Ultron and Vision when he was created. And so I just really love it that they brought in Paul Bettany. I mean, he already played Vision, he already played Jarvis ever since the very first Iron Man movie, so like I could not picture anybody else but Paul Bettany to play Vision at this point, because like he's such a very innovative actor. He just really knows how to pick his roles, and I think just the fact that he decided to play Vision and just further develop his own character in this MCU. So either way, I think when it comes to kind of like the creations of some of the newer characters that we got in this movie was executed very well. And I feel like that the entertainment value went a little bit down a little bit, just because it felt like that this movie is not as rewatchable as like Avengers Endgame, the first Avengers, and Avengers Infinity War. I think this is the least entertaining of Avengers movie. I mean, it did have a good structure, but I felt like that it just didn't get the best execution. But either way, I still think that this movie is a good movie, but it could be better if they actually chose to go different routes. But either way, like I said before, is that I really do think that the villain was good by James Spader being Ultron, and having the new additions such as Elizabeth Olsen being Scarlet Witch. I always forget his name, but he played Quicksilver, and then you got the likes of like James Spader being Ultron, and you got Paul Bettany going from being Jarvis to being Vision, and there was even kind of like a way of developing Iron Man's personality even more, because they just found a way to kind of like, he's still unsure of himself, but you can definitely tell that Captain America, there's a part of him that feels like that Iron Man is doing what he thinks is right, but he's doing it the wrong way. And so that is the very thing that I think that's just really kind of like simmered underneath, and then it would come out of the frying pan just directly into Civil War. And I think Civil War was the very movie that would like bring it up to the next level from this movie, because you could definitely tell that there's kind of like this whole division, like I said before, is that they had different ideals, and it just really started culminating from this movie. And so I really think that they did a good job in kind of like the character studies. They did a good job with the development of specific characters. I feel like that they did a good job with the action, but I felt like that the one that got the most sidelined was definitely Thor. Because for one thing, I really do like Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Like, this movie is just perfectly casted. Like, the entire MCU is perfectly casted in so many ways. Like, you could not envision anybody else but play these specific characters, and so I just really like it that they just dived a little bit more into kind of like the story for specific characters, especially for Iron Man, because he's the face of the MCU. So, with that out of the way, I just need to tell you that this movie is a 7.9. So that was my review for Avengers Age of Ultron. Even though that is not the best Avengers movie, but I would still find it entertaining enough to watch it again at least like once a year or something like that. But I just have to tell you is that, like I said before in previous episodes, is that I'm autistic. There's no downside of it. All I have to say is that it's not a disability, but it's a privilege. And so, I just want to say, keep on drinking coffee, you guys, and I will see you guys next time.